and welcome to the video about overhang, underhang and any other sort of hang up relating to brick stacking of pallets on boxes. This video is linked to lesson 4 extra on my Masterclass module 4 within the Eceeboxes Academy of Box Design. So let's just dive into this. I've got here a pallet on my I've put it on my trusty sample table to give it some height, but this is a cheap and cheerful white pallet, 1200 by 1000. Doesn't cost very much, sort of thing you see every day, and they're really built just to last for a couple of trips. Really, it's a 2-trip pony pallet sort of thing. Now, some of the problems about putting boxes on pallets like this are, first of all, it's an open deck pallet. In other words, there's gaps between the top boards here, usually about 60 or 70 millimeters. That's an issue which we'll come on to in a minute. As opposed to Chet pallets, which are Chet blue, Chet red, they're closed board decks, so there's not so much of an issue there. They're made a lot stronger, and they do multiple trips, and they cost a lot more money. So this is a classic white pallet. So I just want to show you a couple of things about overhang and underhang to start with. So overhang, got some boxes here. These boxes are all about 300, 200, 200, sort of typical retail ready box size maybe. So if you've got overhang, this is what happens, and I've already deformed this just to cheat a little bit. Here's one I made earlier, as they said in Blue Peter. If you've got overhang, this end wall here doesn't really do anything at all because it's hanging over. It's got no resistance here. It's got nothing. It's hanging over in midair. So what happens when you've got another box on top of it, and you might have 6 layers on this, with each with maybe 6 to 7 kilos. There's a lot of weight bearing down on this bottom box. So what happens is, with that weight, it gradually deforms over time when the pallet is running in the back of the truck. And on UK roads, they're pretty awful at the moment, aren't they? So there's a lot of damage can be done, a lot of bouncing up and down the pallets, and the boxes bounce up and down, the contents bounce up and down, and the impact is greater all the time. So eventually it will deform. It will lose its strength even on the sides here, because it's deforming in a classic curve shape. And before you know it, you've either got a semi-collapsed pallet, because the boxes on top will start to fall over and separate, especially when they've been jumping around inside the lorry for a few miles. And before you know it, you've got a semi-collapsed pallet, possibly damage to the contents inside if it's been crushed down a lot like that. So that's not so good. So avoid overhang, particularly now as warehouses who have maybe 30, 80,000 warehouse pallet spaces in their warehouse. Space is a premium, so the distance between the outside of the pallet and the gap that you've got to put the pallet into is much smaller. So overhang is a no-no in that respect at all. So avoid overhang at all costs if you can. Similarly with underhang. Now underhang you'd think was a good thing, so yes, fine. If it's underhanging by say a centimetre or a couple of centimetres, or even 5 centimetres, not too bad. But if it's underhanging with inside the gap here, you have the same problem. It will hang in midair and you lose all the strength of that box. You could easily lose 30% of the strength of this box that's been calculated to hopefully withstand all the weight bearing down on it. And you need a bit of underhang. You can't ever really get a precise perimeter 1200 by 1000 to fit your boxes and your optimization program, because it doesn't work. And I never use 1200 by 1000 for my optimization program. I always generally use 1190 by 990. That gives me a bit of leeway. So anything under 80% that you see in a warehouse that you're going to do an audit for, that's an area that you can look at and possibly improve, because that's not really utilizing the area fully. And I'm sure if with a bit of changes to the contents inside or the primary pack that's inside, you can probably lift that over 85% if you're very clever, and look at utilizing the optimization software that you're using. So that's a couple of points about overhang and underhang. Not so good if it's overhanging the stretcher like this and the gap, and it's doing this, you get a wobbly load and the whole lot will start to collapse. So another bit about brick stacking. So I'm just going to put this back here and another box here to make the pallet back up again. So that's the first layer. Brick stacking, if you're not sure what it is, it's this. So you put the next layer, the box is sitting endways on, and then you build the pallet up like that. So, and generally you'll see people do this quite a lot because they think it's a smart way to do it, but actually you end up with the same similar problem, where these two walls here of the two boxes act as a blade almost, so that when this comes down, and it's very difficult to do it without real weight on it, but this box will start to deform just here because these are pushing in, these walls are pushing up, and the pressure is going down here. So if I put some weight on there, you can just possibly see that that's deforming there, and that will result in a unstable load as well. So that's not good as well. So brick stacking is fine, and most people end up with a brick stack pallet pattern because that's the way boxes are a lot of times. So what you should do is not brick stack like that. You should column stack at least the first two or three layers, and then you can brick stack the next layer on top of that, so it looks like that. So you've got column strength all the way down these walls of all four sides, and that's the best way to calculate the box strength anyway, and it's all related to column stacking, not brick stacking, because brick stacking you can lose 30–40%, so don't forget that. What happens is when you column stack, yeah sure, you can turn the fourth or the third layer 180 degrees so that the brick is a form there, and that's sort of locking the load together, and then the load on the pallet layer on top of that is possibly the same as this one, and then the top layer is rotated 180 degrees, depends on how many layers there are. So you can lock the load, but these three layers here, or certainly two layers if it's a lower layer pallet, are the ones that hold in the strength of the product and the whole load together. So the box compression is all based on this principle of column stacking. Okay, so hopefully that's been useful. Don't forget to contact me, Ask Mick, on my WhatsApp platform or email, and hopefully you've picked up something useful today, and I'll see you again on the next video. Thank you for watching.